Hi, welcome to the 14-day weather forecast. It was a completely dry Easter period around here and it was very warm to begin with, although temperatures dipped later on. So, is the dry weather set to continue as we head through the next 2 weeks? I'll start by taking a look at the view across Europe and the North Atlantic. The animation runs from 18 GMT Tuesday the 19th, and there are some differences already. Heavy showers over much of the UK, some of those could actually be thundery for a time. But as we go through the coming days, the emphasis really switches back to dry weather. The area of low pressure there in the North Atlantic slips southwards, high pressure builds to the north, and an easterly flow develops across the UK. The isobars are quite closely packed together, so it may become rather windy, at least according to this model run. In the days which follow, that area of low pressure has influence across southern and central regions. Could bring some showery outbreaks of rain, perhaps they'll be heavy as well. There is a good deal of uncertainty though about that. And then towards the end of the period, that low pressure slips away southwards and it's becoming mainly dry again. There are some signs though of colder air, or at least somewhat colder air, moving down from the north. So just to take a look at the air temperature profile through that period, it's greens over most of the UK to begin with, so fairly close to the average, and not a great deal changes throughout the week, although there are some indications there of somewhat colder air, as I mentioned, moving across parts of the country at times. But all in all, I don't think there are going to be big variations in the air mass temperatures, so those at about 1,500 metres above our heads. What does that mean in terms of temperatures down to ground level? 15 GMT Thursday the 21st, maximums 15s across most of the 14s or 15s across much of the UK. So not too bad for the time of year, especially in the north there, which is where you would expect it to be somewhat colder, of course. Then going forwards to Saturday the 23rd, temperatures have dipped a little bit by now. Single figures there in the northeast, 10s, 11s or maybe 12s in the south. I think I've just used those two charts to illustrate the extremes of the maximums which have been forecast through that first 7 days or so. Not huge changes, as I say, but of course these are just to give an indication of what could happen. There will be, as I say, day-to-day variations throughout the first week. There could be some chilly nights as well, although with the rather strong winds, the potential for frost will be reduced, I would expect. Nonetheless, minimums of 1, 2 or 3, 4 Celsius on Monday the 25th being shown there. We're not out of woods yet in terms of the frost risk, even in southern Britain, so gardeners do take note. The MOGREPS temperature chart for London shows things quite well. There's a slight dip there, as I say, it's fairly gentle through the first few days as it turns somewhat cooler. And there's reasonably good consistency even further out, with not much variation between all the individual runs within the ensemble. Glasgow, there's a warming trend through the first couple of days, and then then temperatures dip as well. But once more, there is quite good consistency until you go a lot further out. By about the 25th, the spread starts to increase markedly. Before then, though, most of the runs are reasonably tightly clustered together. I mentioned the possibility of it being quite windy. That shows up nicely on the MOGREPS chart for London. 10s, 20s to start off with, but then there's clearly an upwards trend around the 21st through to about the 24th. Maximum wind gusts perhaps 30 to 40 miles an hour. So I don't think they're going to be causing problems, but not particularly pleasant if you're hoping to sit outside with those temperatures around 15 Celsius and then dipping a little bit as well. So it could feel rather chilly for the time of the year. Similar trend if I showed the plot for locations further north as well. Rainfall. Vis-a-vis 0 to 5 day forecast totals from the ECM model on the left, the GFS on the right. Not a particularly wet picture anywhere. Looking at the 0 to 10 day forecasts, and amounts have increased everywhere. The highest values tending to be in southern and eastern Britain rather than the northwest, which is more usual. The reason for that is that the computer models are suggesting that high pressure will be centred to the north and low pressure to the south. So, are the deterministic models consistent with each other at the end of the first week? Here's the GFS chart for Tuesday the 26th. This is the model run which the animation was based on. What it shows is high pressure centred to the west and the north of the UK. There it's stretching into Scandinavia. Similar picture from the Canadian model. Some differences here with the German icon to the northwest, but still high pressure to the northeast and in the Atlantic. The European ECM model, reasonably consistent. Finally, the UK Met Office Global has high pressure there to the north, areas of low pressure from the south pushing upwards, bringing that risk of rain, particularly to southern and central regions. To summarise, reasonably good agreement in terms of the big picture. Differences, though, in the details and the extent of that rain risk across the southern half of the UK in particular. With uncertainty creeping into the forecast by the end of week 1, how are things looking through week 2? As ever, at this range, it's all about trends and probabilities, not specifics. I'll start with the 16-day GEFS plot for London. Across the top, air mass temperatures I've annotated as fluctuating around the average. The thick purple line, which is the ensemble mean, is above the thick black line, the 30-year norm, to begin with, but later on it dips below it. I think, though, it's important to realise that a wide range of potential solutions is being shown here. A few of the runs are bringing in very warm air, and there are a couple which are bringing in very cold air. The ensemble mean, averaging them all out, is coming in close to that 30-year norm, but it is suggesting a relatively low level of confidence because of the possibility of those much warmer or much colder scenarios. Across the bottom, the rain spikes continue throughout the period. Perhaps there are fewer of them and they are smaller later on. The wettest conditions, therefore, more likely through the first few days. Going up to Glasgow to see the view in the northwest. Here, air mass temperatures to begin with are close to the 30-year norm. Later on, they're dipping below it. Once again, though, there is a big spread here, perhaps not so great as in the south. Fewer warm runs and more colder ones in the mix. In terms of rainfall, again, probably fewer spikes on this one than there were on the London chart through the first few days, but later on, the number of them increases and they get bigger, suggesting the risk of rain here is increasing towards the end of the period, the opposite trend to what was being shown on the London plot. 2 metre temperatures, the data table here is for London. Mostly this light orangey colour to begin with. Those are runs going for 16 to 20 Celsius. The amount of orange then dips. Light greens start to return. Those runs going for between 6 and 10 Celsius. And there's quite a lot of yellow in there as well, the 11 to 15s. Again, it's really supporting that trend towards colder upper level air later on. It's been reflected down at the ground level, at least to an extent. A couple of things though here to note. On the 29th, there's a little bit of dark orange. That's shown as 3%, which means one of the runs in the ensemble is going for maximums of between 26 and 30. On the following day, there's a little bit of dark green, 1 to 5 Celsius. One of the runs is showing. And I can bring up the data table to illustrate that. So that's a really warm run. The 26.9 Celsius to be precise is what it's forecasting, and the very cold one on the following day, 3 Celsius. I thought I would show that because it's a huge range. These are both forecast maximums, remember, so it's not the case that one is showing a maximum during the day and the other one is showing the minimum overnight. These are afternoon maximum temperatures. So a range there of 24 Celsius in the ensemble. That's a huge variation. They're both outliers, of course, meaning both are very unlikely to verify. The outcome's almost certainly going to be somewhere in the middle, but it is quite interesting when these turn up. They can't be completely discounted though, because it's showing that the computer model is able to generate those temperatures from the starting data which is fed into it, the synoptics, etc. They are possible, just very, very unlikely. Going back to the data table, this time for Glasgow, mostly light yellows, the 11 to 15 Celsius runs, but the amount of light green and dark green here increases further on, trending cooler through this second week. The mean surface level pressure data table for York doesn't really suggest any dramatic changes through the second week. To begin with, virtually all the runs are in the light yellow category, 1011 to 1025 millibars. Moving forwards for some orange, 1026 to 1040 millibars. Also an increasing amount of green. Those are runs going for lower pressure, 996 to 1010. Difficult to really read too much into what's going on here. Probably a trend, a signal, albeit rather a weak one, for pressure to fall later on. Looking at the GEFS mean pressure forecast for Friday the 29th of April, at this point it still looks as though the signal is for pressure to be higher to the west and the north of the UK. The European ECM at the same time, something similar. Uncertainty though about how much influence areas of low pressure will be having at that point. The 10 to 15 day GEFS pressure anomaly chart doesn't really shed too much light on things. Perhaps the key point here is the orange to the northwest. That's a strong positive anomaly, thereby suggesting the likelihood of high pressure somewhere close to Iceland or Greenland. Not the ideal location for the UK if you're hoping for warm and sunny weather. Well, another bank holiday is approaching, and I just thought I would finish by bringing up the postage stamp chart for it. So May the 2nd. Each of the stamps shows the forecast pressure pattern from one of the runs in the GEFS ensemble, and I think on balance they are suggesting that temperatures are more likely to be close to or below the average than above it, and they maybe point towards an increased chance of rain compared to the norm. Not great, but it is a long way off. Plenty of time for things to change. So, to summarise the next 2 weeks, week 1 begins with scattered showers, but it should be mainly dry through much of the first few days. Temperatures dip and it becomes quite windy for a time. Frost remains possible on some nights, especially in sheltered northern locations. Later on, the potential for rain increases in the south and possibly the east. Week 2, the rain risk to begin with is mostly in southern and central parts of the UK, but later on it spreads northwards. Generally, temperatures should be close to the average, but forecast confidence is of course low during the second week. So, there we have it. Quite a mixed bag of weather on offer through the next 2 weeks. High pressure quite possibly sitting to the west and the north of UK for much of the time. Not the best location if it's warm and sunny weather that you're looking for, particularly in the southern half of the UK. Some uncertainty about rainfall amounts as areas of low pressure maybe push upwards from the south. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, then please remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons below. Thank you very much for watching now. Bye.